It's Brandy O'Neill.
I'm Tiara Jackson,
I'm Peyton Igris.
And we are.
the Ladies of Corrections.
The Attica prison riot was a riot in which over 1,000 inmates of the Attica maximum security state prison revolted and took over the prison. The riot occurred in 1971, and the prisoners demanded better living conditions, and there was also political aspects involved. For example, their religions were not being respected, and they weren't able to pray how they wanted to pray, and they were actually being disrespected and not treated as humans. In order to get their request heard, they took 42 staff hostage in order for the governor and the leaders of the prison to listen to their requests. However, after 4 days of the prison being taken over, the governor of New York, Nelson Rockefeller, ordered the state and local police to regain control of the prison. And by doing this, they set off rounds and rounds of ammunition into the hostages and the inmates of the prison, not caring who they hit. In the end, 33 inmates were killed and 10 correctional officers were all killed by the law enforcement gunfire. While the aftermath had some improvements in the corrections department system, not much was actually made to better the system and better the lives of those in it.
So today we're going to be discussing the differences and the comparisons between the Bedford prison and the Attica State Prison. One prison, the Attica prison, as Peyton already described, is a male's maximum prison, and the women's prison was Bedford prison, and it was a women's maximum state prison. So we're just going to talk about, me and Tiara and I are going to talk about the comparisons of those prisons and the riots that took place there. What do you think, Tiara?
I think it's just crazy how one lasted what they say 5 days.
Yeah, the riot
5 days
in Attica lasted
and they
5
had
days.
negotiations with them, but when it came to the women, they really didn't care because it took 20 hours. So it's crazy how they didn't care to listen what the women wanted because they didn't want much either.
Right.
But they just used their power and a whole bunch of men had to go attack the women. So I think that's just so crazy.
Yeah, the main comparison that I noticed there was that both the men and the women, they just wanted to be treated fairly, be treated more like human beings in the prison.
Better food.
Better food, better resources.
Yeah, so I think it's just crazy to kill people and um kill people and harm them in that way when they just want to be treated like human beings. That's
Right.
literally not too much to ask for.
Right.
And it's something that they have the power to change if they wanted to, but they clearly didn't. So that's just insane to me.
Yeah, I'll never forget how Peyton in class, she was describing the hierarchy of the men, white men, black women, how white men are at the top and then it'll be white women, followed by black men and then black women. So that may be a reason why the men were heard. Although they were still African American, they were heard out for their negotiations versus the women. Like you said, it only took 20 hours for them to intervene in the women's riot. I found that interesting as well. Black women aren't heard as loud and as clearly as their white counterparts. So therefore, their demands weren't equally yoked as the male. Another thing, the men may have been more aggressive. They may have been more in fear of the male prisoners, inmates over in Attica. They were in touch with the New York commissioner. They were heard out by a lot of individuals. However, the Mayor Nixon, I believe it was at that time, he didn't care to listen. So on the 5th day, they decided to intervene. And that turned into a massacre, right? Isn't that right, Tiara?
Right. And I think it's just so crazy too because with the women's one, I don't remember the lady name. Is it Crook? Is it Carol Crook?
Carol Crooks, yeah.
Carol Crook, she got attacked by a whole SWAT team of men just for this little lady. If you saw the picture of her, she was literally so little.
She was.
So for them to have to attack her And like Peyton said in class, like how do you feel like a man like doing that to someone so little? Because it could have just took one of them. So when the women rioted, they really like wanted her to get released and get treated better because
Right.
of her. So yeah, I think it's crazy that it like had to like go to that point
Yeah.
with the women.
Yeah.
All right, so with the men riot with their payout, it said like the hostages families got paid for the
Right.
got paid too, but they wouldn't have had to get paid if they so called cared about the hostages like they so called said they did during the riot, but it showed that they didn't because they just went in there just killing everyone. So they really wouldn't have to pay the hostages families if
Right.
they cared about them.
Right. And then too, I believe like you said, if they cared, I do believe that because Attica was a small village, a small portion of that of New York, they didn't really care too much about the people there or the prisoners. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it was just they were just a casualty of war.
Yeah, like because they went in there with the intent to kill. Like
Right.
when the when that guard died, they didn't kill him on purpose,
Right.
which everyone knows. But like the same way they did the women by hosing them, they could have did to the men, but instead they gas masked them.
Yeah.
Is it gas mask?
Yeah. Gas them. Yep.
Tear gas.
Tear
Tear gas.
gas. Yep. So the gas mask will have to be put on the head. The tear gas can just
Oh,
be across the room, so
oh,
they don't
baby.
have to be up on you. Put the mask on. But like you said, once they release the tear gas,
They just went shooting. Like they
yeah,
didn't see who they was shooting at.
yeah,
They could have like you said, it was small. They could have went in and attacked, but like not killing. Like they could have
yeah,
sprayed them, did anything. So yeah, they wanted to kill any and everyone.
yeah. They definitely wanted to kill, and then too, I believe because the riot had lasted so long, since it had lasted those 5 days, they were impatient. They went in, they wanted to get the job done. It didn't matter who was killed. They could have taken the time out to see who were the hostages.
Mhm.
Although I don't know if the inmates would have provided that information
Yeah.
because that would, not give them the leverage that they already had. So I don't really know how they could have done it differently as far as the intervening of the riot because the riot had to be stopped, as we all would know. They would have to have gained more control over the prison. They wouldn't be able to allow the inmates to take over to have any more control longer than 5 days. Do you think they would last any longer than 5 days on food and resources in the prison? What were they even eating?
I was gonna say that.
Because they already had limited resources.
I
That was
know
the point of
because
the
remember
riot.
they couldn't even use the bathroom or something.
Exactly. They had to build a trench, like a dugout, like some type of trench to have their feces and their urine and all those type of
Maybe it
things.
would have been longer than 5 days because maybe they would have like started negotiating more. Like, okay, we'll release this hostage if you give us food or something like
Right.
that. So it
Okay.
probably could have
They probably
lasted
would have
five
started a
days.
garden in the yard.
No, for real. No, for real.
Those men were innovative.
Yeah,
They probably would have started a garden.
no, for real.
Um, but yeah. With that being said, I know that the women's riot only lasted 20 hours. So, what do you think? Why do you think it was so short? Like, with them intervening, why do you think? Maybe because the women didn't have the man like I don't I would say the strength I guess would be the word the strength like the men did to take
Hmm.
over the prison. Um,
Which is probably why they didn't kill them, which is a good thing.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that's why too. They like
yeah, and the women they like you said they weren't very combative as much. So and they didn't kill anyone. The man the guard
they
had
didn't have
died.
no
So
hostages. They didn't kill anyone. Like they, I feel like they started the riot to start a riot, but not nothing else. Like they
right,
wanted to make some noise and be heard, but yeah,
sounds like a woman. Huh?
yeah, that's it.
Well, so basically after the riot ended, not ended, but once they got more control over the inmates, they basically made them strip down, get naked, had them crawl through the trench that they had built for the feces and for their urine and things like that, made them crawl through that. So dehumanizing them. And after that, after they crawled through the feces, they were basically like raping them with sticks. Like I don't know, with the baton is what one of the inmates survivors basically told us in a documentary. I found that very interesting. like that just goes back to racism. As we know in our history, how black men were treated and basically made felt less of a man. I feel like that's a stigma that follows us today.